Have Brooke Budke back on, and we are talking about grand openings, like everything about grand openings. And we talked about like what's the franchisee's responsibility, what's the franchisor's responsibility, where do things go wrong, and this might be the episode that I cross the line talking to franchisees. But I have the experience. I am a franchisee. I've been a franchisee, but I spoke some truth. Franchisees, franchisors, you got to hear it.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
Brooke, welcome back again.
Third time's the charm.
It's just like we did this last week.
It's my favorite, it's my favorite kind of topic and conversation.
Oh, man. Well, I promise not to sidetrack you with random marketing stuff that I like to do. Today, we are going to talk about grand openings and give some real helpful tools and tips and strategy and like just all over the board. So I think this will kind of set the stage. This will be helpful for franchisees and franchisors. For buyers out there, like when you are thinking about buying a franchise, you will have some tips in here that will help you understand what good franchisors do with grand openings. And so I think you should listen to this for that reason. Franchisees, we're going to kind of give you the playbook of what really good looks like. And don't go take away from this like, oh, my franchisor is not doing very good, so they must be a bad franchisor. No, that's not the case. You take this and help create better marketing systems for them. And then franchisors, like you're gonna absolutely love this. All right, let's jump into it. Where do we want to start? Grand opening. Do we start grand opening like at the actual grand opening day? Is that where we're starting?
Yeah. Let's do that.
We can't start there.
You can. You can start with the end in mind.
Yeah. Okay.
It's one of the most important things to do.
Take it away.
If you don't know the target, okay. So first of all, I honor the point you're making, and we're going to go back there because we absolutely do not start at grand opening day. However, when you're looking at creating the model and the blueprint for a brand, you have to start with casting the most clear vision of what you wish to be true with every unit that's opening for their day one, their first weekend, whatever that is. So you start with the end in mind, right? Let's say you're new to grand opening.
I stand corrected.
You don't know where to start.
I was originally right. I was right thinking I was wrong, but now I'm totally confused. So that's why we have you on as the expert. So
yes.
keep going.
Okay. So you start with the end in mind. And you get very, very clear on what does that look like? What are the numbers? What are the goals? What is the revenue? What is the guest list count? What are the pre-sales they have to hit? Like, what are all the things that are must for them to do that opening day or opening weekend? And then you identify, that's point B. So then you say, where's point A? Where are we at today? Point A could be, we don't have any of those things in place. We have some of those things in place. We need to build them, curate them, whatever that is. And then it's easy to see the gap. Okay, so what's most common with franchise brands is they're like, this list is so long and overwhelming. We don't know where to start on getting the franchisees trained and up to speed, and how early do they start? Well, my counsel in that case would be if you start with the end in mind and you have a very clear vision and understanding of what that path to profitability needs to be day one and opening weekend, then you back it up 90 days prior. That part's easy. So you mentioned, okay, no, we don't start grand opening weekend. Grand opening day, yes. So 90 days prior, your marketing will set the course for your first 90 days of operation. And the first 90 days of operation, I promise you, will determine a successful, a middle of the road, or a failure in a franchise brand. Because the first 90 days, if you think about, use a restaurant as an example, the restaurant that has a line around the block, people will wait for hours to get into. The restaurant that says, hey, come on in, we have no wait. They're like, well, there must be bad food, bad service, bad experience. And so you have to create that swell, that nest egg, that snowball, whatever you want to call it. You have to create that 90 days prior. And people ask often too, Erik, like, what if we don't have a brick and mortar? What if it's a band concept? What if it's virtual? Arguably, it needs to be even sooner if you don't have drive-by traffic and you don't have a brick and mortar for the drive-by visibility. But 90 days prior, again, that work the franchisee does will determine their first 90 days of operation. The first 90 days of operation will determine the trajectory.
How does a franchisor know like what those metrics should be? So think about an emerging brand or maybe an established brand, because I've talked to established brands, they don't really have this dialed in. They didn't start with the end in mind. And so they might have a revenue number, they might have a customer number, a lot of them don't have either of those two things. And so how does somebody go about getting that?
Well, if you have, let's say you have 2 to 3 open locations, you have data that you can look at, number one. Number two, if you're like founder specific and you have 1 to 2 founder locations, you still could use what's true for that or what you want to be true. But I always say, like, first look at what the data and the trends and the performance has told you up until now. And then you look and you kind of do like a self audit, like what was performed, what marketing was done, what wasn't done. Actually, we have a list of things that should be in a grand opening guide. That's like, these are the foundational building blocks that need to be in every grand opening guide to train your franchisees. And you look and you say, what did we do? What did we not do? And what did that get us? So just look at what's true. It's not bad or wrong. You just say, look at what's true and use it as a data point. And then you say, now, is that good? Is that great? Is that poor? What if you don't know the answer to that? Well, at that point, it's intuition, especially in a startup where you're like, I think we could do better. I was just talking to a brand in the membership field. They're selling memberships and they do not have a pre-sale strategy. They have a fair amount of units open. Okay, so this is a great example. Fair amount of units open. They don't have a pre-sale strategy and they're like, where do we start? Well, number one, I want to know what that membership price is, what their break even is, how quickly does a franchisee get there, and then you back into the leads that you need. So you start by looking at what are you selling, what are you offering, what are the services or products, and then once you know what that number is, you go back and say, now how many people do we need to experience this to get that number? Once you have that, then you go build your guest list. You go into the community. Then the tactical stuff is really simple where you say, okay, we need to be in the community. We need to do social. We need to be with a digital vendor who knows what they're doing. We need to have a referral system, maybe a pre-sale or an offer or a download our app and you get $5 off your first food or beverage, whatever that hook is. You have to have the hook when you go into the community. But really, people operating blind, it's not in their favor. It's not in their favor. So look at the data in front of you first, see what's true, what isn't true, do a self audit, and then back into how many leads or prospects you need. And then like I can even give you some chat GPT prompts on like, how do you solve problems in the community by offering what you offer, and then come up with 50 ways to reach that person and go meet those people.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are 2 really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
I was gonna ask, like, how do you come up with that hook? And what are some bad examples of some bad hooks or some good hooks? Or just how do you come up with some hooks? So where do you want to go with that? Because I think this is a place where founders just stop and they don't know what to do. Or even in the marketing department, they don't have full confidence in the hook or the offer that they have to be able to go out to the community. And so they go out there with something weak.
I would say the biggest thing, Erik, that we see is a lack of a hook versus bad hooks. So number one, you have to have an offer before you're open, and it has to add value to your audience, but you have to capture a lead. And for different brands, it's a name, an email, a text, a phone number, however you communicate with people. Most of the people, brands, when I say people, we support the CEOs, founders, presidents of emerging brands. So most of the leaders we support are like, we have this great marketing, we have a really great brand, but we're having trouble with the grand opening. And they say, well, great. How are you capturing your leads? And like, well, we're not. It's like one of the biggest things that I hear is like even a lack of, no, we just want them to experience us, especially if it's a high tech company where it's like they can find us online and they can come in when they come in. Well, that's great, but then you're leaving all the power to the consumer. And if they don't know you well enough to come in and you don't have a sales mentality, and not sales like a gotcha, snake oil sales, but like calling, nurturing, adding value, creating a relationship with people, like brand and culture on the front end. First, you have to even capture the lead in marketing, especially for grand opening. And there are so many brands that we speak to that don't have lead gen built into the culture of their brand. They want to leave it like low key, no, strings attached for the customer, which you think is in the customer's benefit. But the customer's benefit is you actually holding their hand and saying, this is our brand promise, all of the steps along the way. So the biggest thing I see instead of a bad hook is most people just don't have an offer, and they don't have any type of lead capture or lead management system where it's like, we want to collect a name and a phone number and an email, whether you are in person, online, on social media. There are different tools you can use for all of those. And you have to get people's name and information, because we talk about lead list building all the time. Erik, like, this well, like you're as good as your email list. That is absolutely true for a franchisee in grand opening. Like if they have a list of 1,000 people they can call 2 days before the open, 3 days before the open, we can't wait to see you. They send a text blast, they send an email, they do it the day of. That franchisee is going to be successful compared to the franchisee that says, my franchisor promised that the people will come when we open the doors.
We're talking early on building that list. And I just want to be super clear. And you kind of just said at the end, you're building the list to have a great grand opening. You're not building the list at grand opening of people coming in and signing up for something.
Right.
You should have a list to have a grand opening. I'm guessing the list size that you have, like let's say it's 1,000 leads or name, phone number, email, and you have that translates into the size of grand opening that you will have in terms of revenue. And one of our brands had the second largest grand opening that is in history for the brand. So you want to be able to continue to have better and better grand openings because franchisees are making the system better. That's the case with this brand. But you need to be able to build that list. And when you're coaching your founders, are you telling them, like, have your franchisees have a list size that they should have and how that translates into a better grand opening?
Absolutely.
How often do you see that correlation?
The correlation to good grand openings with lists? Well, that depends on the model. So if you have like a bar, a concept that's a bar, a tap room, and you need thousands of people your grand opening weekend, versus if you have a membership model and your break even for franchisees is 250 members, well, that pre-sale is going to look different, versus if you have a soap that you can sample in your marketplace, but then like you have to nurture them to get them in to buy it over time. Like it just, the number depends on the type of service, goods, membership that you're offering, number one. But one of the things that you said that I want to call attention to is you had the second largest grand opening in company history. And one of the biggest, I don't want to say most obvious because it's actually not obvious, but one of the most impactful things you can know in grand opening and in franchising in general is that numbers create competition.
Wait. That was a hook. What you just said, like, just so people, you just gave a big tease right there, like the biggest thing or the so like I want people, as we're doing these podcasts with experts like you just do this second nature. You're thinking about things and like what you just gave, like, was put somebody on the edge of their seat and they're like, I want that thing. I want to know what Brooke was about ready to say. So go ahead and finish it. But I just wanted, like, it's second nature for you, and you have the experts around you helping you with this stuff. It's second nature for them, and you don't have to try really hard to have great hooks or great offers or this, that, and the other, because it's easy for them. So I'm sorry I stopped you, but I wanted to kind of bring attention to like, because you were doing a masterful job of that. You remember what you were going to say?
Thank you. Well, so numbers equals competition. So you said the second highest opening in company history. So your franchisees have a target. because you are clear with what the worst has been and what the best has been. So you know if it was the second best. So first of all, what you recognize gets repeated in franchising. When you learn to recognize, create milestones for the numbers they need to hit, and you recognize them publicly, a franchisee will be highly competitive to make sure that their name is above the line so that they are not below the line of what's normal, average, above average, etc. So one of my best tips to a franchisor is, no matter what you are doing in grand opening, is to create a grand opening award. And that award is given upon a certain date range. And in that date range, you have a milestone they must hit. And every franchisee that opens better, they win the grand opening award. They hold that grand opening award. The coveted, you actually have a physical trophy. You present it at your annual conference. If you're too small to have a conference, you take it to them yourself. You take a picture, you send it out to your franchise system, and you say, Erik just won our grand opening award. He now will hold this until somebody can knock him off the pedestal. And you create a new target for the franchisees to say, I'm going to go knock Erik off. They're going to call Erik and say, what did you do specifically? This is what's going on in my market. So then you create the communication and the networking opportunities. The other thing is, when numbers create competition, you are clearly defining what winning looks like ahead of time so that the franchisee has a target. And that is the biggest missed opportunity today, because when you talk about milestones, responsibility, metrics, all this stuff, if you at least say, we want 100 pre-sold before you open. If you don't have 100 pre-sold members, we're not sending our grand opening training team out, of which you will be paying rent, and you will start and you'll have your occupancy, and you will not be selling, and we will not turn on any point of sale system, because this is the measurement that we hold our standards to. They're going to have 100 because you have the milestone and you have the levers in place of which you are modeling off of. Now, when you say Erik opened with 250, and he's our grand opening award winner, and he has the coveted trophy on his desk for everybody to see, somebody's going to say, I'm going to go do 300. So you're literally drawing, it's the breadcrumb effect. You're drawing the map for the franchisees, but you're using each one of your openings in the system to incentivize the next. And what you recognize gets repeated. If you're recognizing the marketing star every single month on your internal training and webinars, to what they're doing, to having fran shares where the franchisees are sharing best practices. Like, it's like raising a big family. Like, the kids kind of raise each other once you have more than, once you have 3, because they outnumber the parents. So it's the same thing in franchising, like having the guiding principles, the promises you make, less rules, more promises of what the franchisee can do, you can do, and then be very clear and recognize it, because you put that target out there, and that target is their friend or their neighbor or somebody across the country. They will absolutely crush that better, further, and faster than just saying, gee, I really wish you'd have 100.
And that puts the responsibility on the franchisee. Like, so many franchisees that don't fully understand franchising, they want the franchisor to do everything for them. And they think, oh, I'm going to have a great grand opening, the franchisor is going to do it for me. Myself, as I look back at the different brands I was involved with, I put so much of that responsibility on myself. And the franchisees that I was around, like, the reason they had amazing grand openings were because they wanted to have amazing ones, and they learned what the others did, and they just did more or did it better. And what would you say to franchisees out there that want to excel at grand openings or marketing? Like, what advice would you have for them? Like, rely on the franchisor, do it a little bit better. Like, how much more effort does it take from the franchisee standpoint to have, like, the award-winning grand opening?
I think I could answer your question in 2 different parts. The responsibility matrix will be where I land, but first I want to say, like, if you're a franchisee, or if you are an employee of a franchise brand, okay, you're going to wear a lot of hats, just like a franchisee will wear a lot of hats. Whoever works in franchising, you wear 17 hats a day, and you get paid for one of those hats, and you work a lot of hours. Like, just the industry alone is like the hustle mentality. So if you don't possess that mentality, you're in the wrong field, first of all. So franchisee selection is important. But one of the things you said is, like, what could a franchisee do to level up their business? Well, my best piece of advice to an employee or to a franchisee or to a staff member, whoever it is inside of your brand, is that it is not the company's job to develop you. It is your job.
Say that again and say it louder.
It is not the company's job to develop you. It is yours. And it is yours for the rest of your life. And it is yours, whether you win or lose, is what time of day you wake up and how you start the day and what you eat and what you listen to and the podcasts you absorb. And then no extra time you have in your day when you're driving your kids to school to you're making the phone calls and you're working the partnerships. Work works. And in small business America and in franchising specifically, the more you work, the better your brand works. And it's not about working harder or smarter. It's actually both. You got to bust it. You just do. And if this is your job and this is what you signed up to do, it is not your franchisor's job to bust it for you. It is their job to put the resources, the tools, the infrastructure, the training, the guidelines in place. It is your job to just go as hard as possible in the best way, living out the mission and the vision every single day inside of your community. You wear the shirts everywhere you go. You're a walking advertisement. You put it on your car. You sponsor the kids' baseball teams, and it becomes part of you. Eat it, live it, breathe it. Those are the people that succeed. And those are the people that are going to succeed, Erik, at whatever they do in life. God love them for joining a franchise brand, because those are the people who say, give me the playbook, coach. I'm going to go when, the Chiefs are going to get a 3-peat this year. Sorry, prediction. So you can be the Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not an independent entrepreneur. He's still playing for a team, and he is the very best at what he does. So you could be the very best at what you do, drive profitability, drive company vision and mission in your community, and still follow the playbook. So don't go off script, but do go as hard as possible in your own life, mentality, mantra, commitment, leadership style. Because one of the best things is people will follow a good leader. And that's true at the front line will impact your bottom line. So the people you hire want to work for a good leader. They actually don't care about the brand name. They care about the boss. And so if you're a good boss inside of your location, you create the culture, you show them how to hustle, your team will hustle. You will not attract people that don't hustle if you're a hustler yourself. You just won't. So number one, mindset has to be on par, in place every single day, no exception at the franchisee level. And that's also franchisor level. That's what I believe people should do in life in general.
Well, one little point on that. One of my mentors early on, he had, he's like, these are the most, I can't remember what he said, but here's what he said. If it is to be, it's up to me. And he's like, that's what you should be thinking as a franchisee. If it is to be, it's up to me. And, and that put the responsibility on the franchisees, because the franchisor is going to do stuff to help the franchisees. Franchisees won't always understand, most of the time won't understand how the franchisor really is trying to help them. And they've got, 50, 100, 200 franchisees that all have, 2 or 3 better ideas than the franchisor has. And you don't want a franchisor that listens to all of these franchisees and trying to do things to appease all of these franchisees. So as much as you want your 2 or 3 ideas to be able to get through to the franchisor, and those be the ones that the franchisor listens to and fixes, they're hearing that from everybody else, all these different franchisees. You want a franchisor that's going to prioritize the list of things that need to be done. There's always things that need to be done. There's always things that they can do to improve the system, always things they can do better to be a better franchisor, to help their franchisees. But the franchisee, really, you don't want them trying to do everything for every franchisee, or else they are really not helping the system as a whole.
They're actually not doing their job. There's no compliance. There's no standard. You can't be all things to all people. And that's one of the biggest rubs is the franchisees will say, but wait, but what about this? What about this? And the more the franchisor does this, the less they do this.
Yeah. They have to focus. Franchisors have to focus too.
Yes. Stop looking left and right at every which type of request. Cast the vision for where you want to go and have the horse blinders and say, this is where we're going. My tip on listening to franchisees. Number one, you do have to have open relationships with franchisees as the franchisor. My recommendation is to have 1 or 2 times a year where you have a vendor request, open office hours policy. So let's say you give franchisees 2 weeks to a month to say, submit this form, outline which vendor you would like for us to review, what type of background they have. Do they have franchise experience? What their results have been? Why you recommend them? What they would do for your business? We will interview them, vet them, and consider them. So the franchisor's job is to listen to the franchisees of understanding what's best for the system, but it's also their job to decide what's best for the system at large, to then interview all of those vendors in a lump sum and say which parts will help us the best to reach our goals, and then to make new introductions. Because most of the time what happens is there's too many head fakes going on to where they can't, especially a small marketing team with no budget, you don't have the time or resources to devote to interviewing vendors, because it's actually a very tedious process, and you want a franchisor to take their time when interviewing vendors and agencies, and to make sure that they're skilled and that they have the experience and what their cost is going to be to their franchisees and how they would roll out and hold the brand standards. It is a very detailed process. So you actually don't want the franchisor to spend their time there. You want the franchisor to spend the time teaching, training, educating, and implementing, which ties it back to the responsibility matrix. You had asked the question about like, who owns what? If you're the franchisee, what can you do to succeed? And if you're the franchisor, my favorite thing a franchisor can do is be very clear. I think clarity equals kindness. So you will not always love what a franchisor has to say or do with the decisions that they make. But if they are clear on why they make them, how it's going to impact you, what the cost is going to be, and how it's going to be implemented, a franchisee is generally understandable. They can work with it, roll with it, even if they don't like it. As long as you have clarity in what you are communicating, it will translate to kindness in your culture. So one of the first places to start in creating that clarity is by using a responsibility matrix. And the responsibility matrix is franchisor does X, franchisee does Y. And it is a very clear document that says, social media, we do this, you do this. Facebook, we do this, you do this. Instagram, we do this, you do this. Because every channel is different. Digital ads, we do this, you do this. Community marketing, we do this, provide you tactics, tools, resources, tablecloths, tents, print vendor, you do this. Execute, communicate, educate, like in your field. You have to be very clear of who does what. Because if a franchisee has this list and they say, I don't know where to start, you say, you start on Y. We will handle X, you are Y. You start on this side. We are going to do this side, and it is a team. And for both of you to be doing it together, it does multiply efforts. It really does.
Well said. How does one go about creating that matrix? Do you have a little handout on that? If not, you probably should.
We do. So I have a lot of lead magnets, and I actually am always thinking like, what is going to be the next best thing that brands need? Or if you listen to the last podcast, we have a list of everything that should go into your grand opening guide. And this is just a really great place to start. Like, even if you're not an emerging brand, let's say you have 50, 70 units, aren't you curious what other brands are doing? Like, don't you want to still look at your list and say, can we add to it? And if you are starting at zero, like, where do you start? So it's really good for any size of units. One of our next things we're actually going to share is like ways you can win LinkedIn on organic lead gen for franchise development, because it is a tool that is very underutilized in franchise marketing, organic. But Erik, to your point, we do have a responsibility matrix. It's really not like a big daunting formula. You have to whiteboard it and say, if you look at across the top, the big stuff, website, social media, communication, franchise training, like, you just make your list of all the things you promise them. And underneath those, you have the bullet points of, let's use Facebook, content creation, stories, content calendar, frequency, engagement, ads. Like, you just keep going down the list of all the things you should even do for Facebook, and you make an X in the franchisee column or the franchisor column. You want to go another level deeper. You say, is this daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually? Because there are things that the franchisor should be doing daily, weekly, annually, quarterly, monthly. The same for the franchisee. So also, when you look at creating responsibility, also be specific in frequency. It's not just who owns it, but it's also how often do you own it. Both of those things need to be in a responsibility matrix. But it can be really simple. Yes, we do have a tool and template, but it can also just be a whiteboard with your team.
All right, you're going to be Brooke, the lead magnet queen. You're gonna have so many good ones. That's why people should get in your newsletter. Little break. How do people get on your newsletter? Because it's a great one.
Thank you. If you go to themomentumbrands.com, we have a sign up for the newsletter. It's called The Sauce. And every single Tuesday, we have a note from myself on mindset, leadership, franchise experience, marketing experience. A note from Hallie, our brand director, on culture and trends and things to watch and take note of in your business. And the moves, which we feature our brands that we admire, brands that we're supporting, and moves we're making at Momentum. And then quick links, like for anybody. You've been in the quick links and the moves because of the podcasts that we've been on. But as an example, like this week, we're sharing like how to attack your holiday offers in our newsletter, and people will lose their mind. I walked into Hobby Lobby to get my son something, and they had Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas out in August. And I said to myself, good gosh, like who does this? However, the consumers do this. Women do this, especially planners. And if you are running a franchise brand, like free tip, you need to be thinking about what your Black Friday offers are in August. You will develop them in September, you will communicate them in October, and your franchisee will execute them in November. So it is not too early to be thinking about Q4 end of year and how you want to finish. In fact, if you are not doing it right now, arguably you're behind. So again, freebie on planning. Always the franchisee needs 1 to 2 months notice to plan and execute. The franchisor needs 6 months plus to plan and execute, because you need to be looking at data, what it's going to do to ops, what your point of sale system needs to do, what does your CRM need to do, how does it all integrate for the offer. The marketing and the creative is actually the very last thing you put in place. You have to make sure it's smooth for the consumer. So all of, yes, start planning now for Christmas. Again, free tip.
You should have started yesterday. We're in the middle of August right now. You should have started yesterday for Christmas. It's true. We're talking to our brands about holiday offers. So very true.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to grand opening. What have we not talked about around grand opening that you think would be helpful?
Well, there are a number of things. I think I always love using examples, and so I'll give one specific that happened at Title. So there was this young guy who came in, and Title Boxing Club was where I was at previously, and it was a membership model in the fitness space. And this young guy started as like a trainer, was like, I really want to be a franchisee. And, you always hear those stories, Erik. They started as a customer and they want to be a franchisee, and you have to go through the same process any other candidate would. And you think, is this person going to be the leader? Turns out Aaron in Granville, Michigan, and now he has Grand Rapids and Granville, Michigan, still probably holds the grand opening record today. He opened in the dead of winter in the middle of Michigan, and he just went so hard on pre-marketing. And he opened north of 500 pre-sales. Unbelievable. He went to the mall. He set up a step and repeat backdrop. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's your logo multiple times, like you see it at Hollywood, red carpet, where somebody can stand in front of it. He had the big boxing gloves. He had fun music. He rented out like a booth space in the middle of the mall where everybody was in the dead of the winter in Michigan. And he started doing like boxing demonstrations. Then he had the big oversized gloves, and he had people take pictures. And he said, oh my gosh, let me text you these pictures. They're so great. What's your name and phone number? Guess what he was doing? Building his lead list. Okay, then he went and tagged those people on social media. Guess what he was doing? Building his social following. Then he went and he said, okay, great. Where do you live? Oh, you live here? Oh, you're at that apartment? He started doing pop-up workouts at the apartments when the weather got nicer. He was everywhere his audience was. And the reason I bring him up is a week ago, he texted me and he said, is this still your number? This is Aaron. And I was like, yes, this is still Brooke. He said, I'm sending you a video. And he now has taken his social media to a new level, and they're doing regular content creation. And he filmed a video walking a potential member through what to expect. And at the end, he ended the video, Erik, with the mission of the company, which I personally wrote and curated. And it was like, to make this the best hour of your day. We promise to make this the best hour of your day. Because, if you're a brand in mission work and vision, and you have to keep it really simple, and it's actually not about the product, it's about the customer. We were boxing, fitness, membership, but we said, we're just going to make this the best hour of your day. So 9 years later, he sends me this video. he's still living out the mission. He's still hustling. He's still teaching the classes. He's still going to the apartment complexes. And people say, doesn't it ever get easier? Like, well, sure, it gets easier because it becomes second nature. But you don't stop doing the things that work and the things that you build the brand upon. And so here's the guy who's covered in tattoos, former trainer, teaching the product in the marketplace, still doing that today, 7, 8 years, 9 years later, weathered the storm during COVID and fitness and is wildly successful and now creating his own content, living out the mission. And so my point of that story, actually, chills thinking about it, is what he did then was work harder than what anybody else had ever done. It wasn't, he probably had a $500 ad spend, not a lot of money in digital ads. And it was enough because people saw him everywhere. So then the ad performs better and his content on social was rolling. And when you are investing in a content strategy, your ads perform better. And then your ads are going to perform better when people don't see it for the first time because they see you in their community. So it's this compounding interest of, I am everywhere my audience is. I am running a low budget ad spend. I am doing daily content on social media. I am getting a name and a phone number and an email, and I'm following up with them. We had a pre-sale that was solid with a 2-week guarantee. So he was able to offer these people something and say, if you don't like it and you absolutely hate it, no problem, we'll give you your money back. But you know those first 2 weeks are going to be fire because they're going to be where your staff is the most excited. And then flash forward 7 years later, the man is still doing the same things and has the same, if not more, success with a membership model and is so well known in his community. So it's like when you asked the question earlier, Erik, about like, what can a franchisee do? Like that has very little to do with the brand and the franchisor, and like 90% to do with him and his execution and his mindset, and then never quit, constant and never ending improvement mentality. And to, take the mission of the brand and to say, this is who I am and I'm going to live it out and I'm going to tell everybody I know about it. And like that exact model, it's actually very, very, very simple. I gave a lot of detail and explanation, but he did community marketing, minimal ads, heavy social media, heavy customer engagement and follow-up and communication. And when you said earlier, wait, stop, this is so natural for you, these are hooks. He just became the product. He's a product of the product. So it was so easy to talk about. He was obsessed with it. So when people met him, they're like, oh my God, that's that Title Boxing Club guy, because he was obsessed with it. They became obsessed with it. If you're lukewarm about it, they're going to be lukewarm about it. So it's really just like owning the vibe and the presence and the brand and the community and all the different channels. And then once you're open, you have referrals and loyalty and retention and engagement and different levers to pull. But before you're open, it's like, those are the 3 that you just work really hard at.
Why do some franchisees not do that? They don't engage in that grassroots street marketing, boots on the ground, or they don't have their team do it on the front level. Why would they pay all this money to be a part of a brand and then not do that?
This is the golden question in franchising, Erik. It is such an insightful question. And my answer to why would a franchisee not perform? Why would they not do what's needed to win? And I think it goes back to understanding the psychology of people. So in most cases, I believe that people are making the best decisions they see in front of them. I do. I think people are inherently good people by nature, and they are making the best decisions they see in front of them. Now, in that specific example, my intuition, being in franchise marketing and franchising for 12, 13 years, would be fear. I think the top 2 worst nightmare moments, the biggest fears anybody ever has, is that I am not enough. And if I am not enough, I will not be loved. And if you apply that to business, they say, if I just don't do those things, then I won't fail. They don't realize that they are failing in doing that. However, I think people inherently are really afraid to fail. And so then they get in their own way and they don't believe that they have limiting beliefs that they can do it, that they don't want to learn social media, that they're not the guy that goes into the community. Hey, I don't want my face to be online. I've heard it all. I need to hire somebody else to be the GM because I'm not really a people person and this is a people business. Like, first of all, like, know what you're getting into. It's a really good place to start. But secondly, like, if that isn't a skill set you possess, I really encourage you to learn it. Like, there is zero harm in learning LinkedIn, learning Instagram, spending time in QuickBooks, understanding real estate. Like, you are becoming a business owner, and business owners have to know marketing. And today I shared this fact on LinkedIn. You know this fact to be true. People follow founders and brand leaders more than they follow brands. And so as a franchisee, their face, their likeness, their reputation in the community is why people will support you locally. Not because, oh, Jersey Mike's is coming. It's like, oh my gosh, did you know Erik is opening a Jersey Mike's? We have to go to his opening. Those are very different things. And so I think in general, you know, some franchisees don't execute. By and large, I think it's due to fear.
Add on to that, franchisees, it's easy to look at the things that are not working because something might not work as well as you thought it would. And it's easy to talk to other people who, you know, would agree with you that certain things are not working. And I'm speaking right now as, you know, advisor to franchisors, been a franchisor, been a franchisee, been an area developer. So I've been in all of these different seats that I've been in, I've seen this to be true. But these, you know, franchisees, we like to, you know, be around other people that are miserable, and we can talk about the things that are not working. Instead of looking, if it's an emerging brand with very few locations open, look to the founder. Their numbers are probably in the item 19, and they're probably pretty impressive numbers that are in the item 19. So why don't you lean into that to be confident that it works and to learn from them instead of talking about all the things that are not working. Find out the things that did work, why they worked, and lean into that. Talk to the franchisees where it does work and they are having success in these things where you may not be having success or things that you want to try. So I see franchisees just, you know, over the past 20 years in all of these different things that I've been involved with, that some of them, they would just rather not do the work themselves and see where they should be doing more work and doing, you know, 10xing or 20xing the things that they were told to do that they should be doing. Instead, they just think, oh, this doesn't work. All of these things that I've been involved with, brands I've been involved with, brands that I've seen come and go, very few brands don't work. Very few brands have such poor leadership and a poor brand and a poor model and a poor system that it doesn't work. There's very, very few of them. So the chances that you're in one of those are like slim to none. So you just have to press in to understand what's working and why. And you have to be open enough to see that you might be the problem, not the franchisor. And that's tough to hear. Like, that's tough to hear. But again, I'm saying this because it's true. Like, I want these franchisees to win. I want to win. You know, in one of my investments, I'm an investor in a franchisee as a franchisee. And one of our locations wasn't doing very well. Well, my ops partner, had to get on a plane and fire some people because our other one's doing amazing. So he had to go out there and get rid of the team. And if that was his only location, he could have come to me and said, Erik, it just doesn't work in this market. But instead, he's like, there's a reason it's not working. I'm going to go out there and figure out what it is. Oh, these people are afraid to get out in the community. They're gone. Like, he fired them and hired a new team because they were the wrong team. Some of these franchisees listening to this need to hear that. And, you know, you just need to take that personal responsibility and be confident in that, because most of the franchise systems out there, they work, and you just need to lean into that. I don't know. Was that too rough?
No, I think, Erik, my piece of advice on what works and what doesn't work is I love to stay in a state of curiosity and to say, how do you know? How do you know it's not working? How do you know it is working? Okay, so are you tracking the data? Are you accurately listing a lead source to intelligently say whether something is working or not working? It's very different than, this just might not be the right market for it. So first of all, like, tracking things is really important. But second, this is a marathon. You have to do the same thing every day over and over and over again. And it's like more like the Ironman. You're swimming, running, and biking. You're the landlord, you're the GC, you're the marketer, you're now the head of HR, you're also finance. Like you're running all of these things all at the same time. So when somebody's like, it doesn't work here, first of all, I always love to just stay in a state of curiosity and say, how do you know that? Like, let's unpack that. What's true for you? What else could be true here? Now, one of my counsels is that this is the long game. So if I were to tell you 3 years ago, I'll use LinkedIn. 3 years ago, I would say LinkedIn, I accept everybody that's on there. It's an okay platform. It's really old and dated. I don't really understand why people use it unless you're looking for a job. Was like by and large why most people go to LinkedIn. Now, flash forward 3 years later, I can tell you that 90% of our leads come from LinkedIn because I have a daily piece of content that I am doing or saying that is adding value to a franchise brand leader, CEO, or president's life, brand, setup, marketing, whatever that is. I'm not selling my services. I don't say, hey, come buy what we're offering, because in fact, we have a vetting process that is quite long, that we make sure we're going to be investing in brand leaders that, number one, we like, but two, that there's a white space, that there's a trajectory there, that they have a good foundation. But what I'm doing over the course of the last 3 years is a daily piece of content. Now, 3 years ago, I'd have said LinkedIn doesn't work. That's not a strategy that works for me because I wasn't working it. Wasn't doing it. I didn't understand it. And as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a franchise leader, you have to understand all the channels. Like this isn't the day that you get to say, I don't understand Instagram. I'm going to let somebody else do that. Because this is your business. This is your livelihood. This is your family that you have on the line. This is also your personal, like always be a student and an educator and want to learn more and never graduate mentality. So what I've learned about LinkedIn 3 years later is one of my top tools that works. And 3 years ago, I would have said, this doesn't work, Erik. This is old. They need to be updated. They're not current. But you know what? The average user is kind of old. And so it's a great platform for the average user who is a middle-aged executive. It is a great middle-aged platform. Like it actually is really great when you look at like behind the scenes on LinkedIn, but you have to learn how to use it. And so when you say like, franchisees will say, this doesn't work here, or it's just my market, or you don't understand, number one, like ask better questions, like why and how often, and is this really true? And if it were absolutely true, like if something is absolutely true without a shadow of doubt, there is no way it could be wrong. That's like 1% of facts in the world. Most of the time there's wiggle room of that. There could be other truths going on of what's really happening here. So like staying in a state of curiosity, but also knowing that this is the long game and you will do the same thing and eat the same meal. If you don't like chicken and broccoli, get ready because you are going to eat chicken and broccoli, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day running a small business. And you have to do the same thing over and over and over again. And then it just starts working. When you talk about people, like firing the wrong people, you have the right people on the front line. It impacts the bottom line. You're doing the consistent long game marketing, storytelling, leadership style. That does work, but it does not work overnight. It absolutely does not work overnight. And then the other part too, you talked about just with the team, the selection of who you bring on to the brand will absolutely determine your trajectory. And my counsel when people say they have a marketing problem is there are lots of funnels, let's say in marketing. You look at a lead flow. This is grand opening and open locations. If you look at the lead flow and the customer journey, the value chain you offer a customer, you have your pre-marketing, you have your prospect, you have your lead, and your lead is somebody you're calling, a warm lead, a cold lead, a hot lead, somebody that's like engaged with your brand. You have their first intro experience. Then you have the sales process. Then you have a membership or they buy. Those are all the touch points you look at to understand if you really have a marketing problem. Chances are you might not have a marketing problem. You might have the wrong person on the phone. You might have somebody that's on their cell phone and not smiling at somebody and looking them in the eye when they walk in the door and saying, hello, thank you for finding us. Like most of the time, it is an operation, it is sales, it is a process. It is rarely because you're not doing really well in marketing. So also too, if you think you have a marketing problem, stay in that state of curiosity and say, is this true? Or do we also have the wrong person managing the leads so they're not converting? All of that is relevant in pre-sale or opening once you're open.
That's so good. So good. I love being in that state of curiosity. All right. Anything else that we didn't cover?
Yeah, you have such a huge audience and they're so invested in the people that you interview. Like the Hello Sugar interview is just fantastic. And like you bring on these great guests. And so your audience, you know them. They listen to all the different content you put out. What do you think is like the thing that keeps them up at night about grand opening? Do you think it's tools and resources? Do you think it's like how to measure them? Do you think it's like because I could give any piece of advice on all of
I
it.
don't know what it is. I know what it probably should be. Do I have the right team to open this thing? Like they need to make sure that they have the right team. Meaning a lot of people, they're going to have a warm body that has a smile, that needs to be a marketer, needs to be outgoing, needs to be engaging, needs to be like comfortable getting out of the location of its retail or out behind the phone of its service base and getting out in the community and marketing. And a lot of franchisees I see out there, they don't have that type of person. That person that they have seems to be okay, but they don't get out there, and they're not out there marketing, they're not out there hustling, they're not all the things that we just said. I think that's the thing that should keep them up at night. Do I really have the right person in place to be able to have the type of grand opening that I need to have? That's what I think it should be. What do you think? And how would you help that person sleep better at night?
For a franchisee, it likely will come back to, do I have the right team to execute and to build the lead list for my grand opening? My recommendation there is related to building a street team. It's not going to be one person. It's going to be a number of people who you recruit and you teach them, and they need to be your target audience, the exact demo of who you want to attract. And they need to walk the walk and look the part and be a product of the product. If it is a fitness place, you hire fitness people. If it is a bar, you hire fun, young connectors who are super outgoing. If it is soap, you hire kind of an organic granola girl. Like you go for the exact target audience. And then you send them into the community and the gear and the, with the offers and with the ability. Also do train them and make sure they role play and understand how to speak about your brand and what their goal is, and then bonus them on their goal of achieving it. So as a franchisee, that would be a tip. I think the thing that also keeps the franchisors up at night is I believe that I have a really great model, and I know franchising will help us grow our footprint, but how do we duplicate what we're doing? I think that's the number one thing I hear also from the franchisor's point of view. And in that case, I always recommend documenting everything you're doing, whether it's what you use or not use long-term. Make sure you're taking note of what you're training. And then to have the tools and resources, the new store opening checklist, the grand opening budget tracker, the grand opening guide, like taking the time to document it. And even if they're short and small to begin and they get larger over time, have something everybody follows and use that for your training. And then have at least a day for marketing training for every grand opening person in your training. Ops, training, product, legal, whatever, HR, but at least a day in marketing, 8 hours worth of training for your grand opening when they come through training.
Last question for me. How does a franchisor effectively keep that franchisee accountable to that checklist and the KPIs and whatnot for grand opening?
Accountability is a team effort. Number one, the founder and president and CEO needs to stop saying yes to build fans in the franchise system, because oftentimes when you say yes as the leader, you throw your team under the bus. So instead, the appropriate response is, let me get back to you. Let me investigate that. Noted. Let me keep that in mind. And you follow up with your team and you ask your team what is feasible and if this is something that's going to benefit the system. Because oftentimes the franchise leader will say yes before they have a solution, and then it kind of throws the team under the bus. So it is a team effort on accountability. I also recommend a new store opening manager to be the single point person. And this isn't a marketer and this isn't ops. It's probably largely more of an operational role. And they meet with the franchisee every single week and they hold them accountable to not just the marketing items, but everything on the new store opening checklist. And in that, monthly meetings with marketing to ensure that you're talking about the community, that you have the game plan, you understand their social, you're reviewing it, you're giving them recommendations. But one of the most important in the new store opening checklist is a grand opening budget. And for them to submit, this is what I'm going to spend in advance of spending it, in the areas I'm going to invest, how much dollars in which month over the course of time, gives you a bird's eye view to if they're going to be successful or not. And that is one of the biggest elements in the new store opening pipeline that needs to be done early. So then you can hold them accountable to what they said that they were going to do, which therein large puts it on them, which is great because it is their responsibility. And they're saying, this is my plan, my business plan, my marketing plan. Please help me and hold me accountable to achieving it. That becomes far easier for the franchise brand. And then the marketer really leading up to grand opening could go weekly on meetings like that last month. But up until then, it actually should be like a new store opening manager talking about all things: leasing, construction, permits, occupancy, marketing, because there's so many firing at the same time. But most of the time, Erik, it is the founder, president, or CEO that actually will allow too much variance in the brand, not the staff. And so my recommendation is to always be talking to the franchisees and to stop making promises.
I love that. And I can't agree more. Well, I'm not going to have you back on next week because I wouldn't have any more guests.
Erik, don't you want me to interview you?
That's right. After I get over my summer cold, then yes, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
So good to have you on. Thanks again for coming.
I loved it, every part of it. And thank you to your audience again for being as engaged with you, because you are feeding them news and information in the community that's going to help them grow. And that's what we stand for at Momentum. So we always love the podcast and being on it and your audience. And thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.